Our teams of creatives and studios and designers, they have stories to tell and things they want to show you and places they'd like to take you. That's what we're trying to do here at PlayStation. This coming year is going to be all about those kind of games that we can deliver to you in a way that's going to blow your minds. And tonight, we're beginning here to let you start that journey with us and let us tell you our stories for the next hour or so.
Okay, so while Microsoft's conference was all about the games, Sony's conference was all about the gameplay. It was a much smaller, more intimate showcase, predominantly focusing on the stories and gameplay for the big 4 games that they wanted to showcase, which was The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, and also Marvel's Spider-Man. There were a couple of announcements in there as well, a few surprises, but not that many. Sony's conference was much smaller this year, and I think, it just shows that they've got confidence in their brand, confidence in the games that they're coming out, and therefore wanted to just focus on those games, their stories, their gameplay. And that wasn't a bad thing. I actually quite enjoyed both conferences this year. I enjoyed Microsoft's conference a lot, and I also enjoyed Sony's conference a lot too. They were just very, very different vibes and very different feels. I think Sony's had a lot of big conferences in past years where they've had a lot of surprises and a lot of reveals and a lot of wow moments, like with the God of War reveal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Shenmue 3, so on and so forth. So, having a year where they're just going, do you know what, we've got lots of good titles coming out, we're confident in those, and we're going to show you some gameplay, that's completely fine with me. So let's talk a little bit about those games, what they showed us, what I generally thought of them, and also a little bit about the reveals that they announced as well, and what my general thoughts were on the conference. So they started off in a really small area, compared to Microsoft's stage, which is freaking huge. Sony's was really small, really intimate. It was like this sort of pre-built kind of location that was sort of like a church. Didn't really make much sense. There were lots of like little fairy lights up in the roof, and very, very different. And I was like, why are they doing this stage like this? It did become obvious when they started to show the gameplay trailer. So the location was basically to do with The Last of Us Part 2. At the beginning of the conference, we started off again with music. I think this is going to become like a trend for Sony, where they're just going to have like live musicians on stage, kind of like what they did with God of War with the huge orchestra, which was just super powerful. With this one, they had a guy called Gustavo Santoria, who was sat on stage with kind of like a hoodie on and was sort of playing like an 8-string banjo and playing music from the new Last of Us Part 2. And it really did create this atmosphere and kind of a feeling of the hopelessness of Last of Us, and obviously what the game's going to delve into. From there, we went straight into the gameplay demo, which just absolutely looks incredible. They started off straight away by focusing on Ellie. It was really cool to see Ellie sort of kind of grown up. She's sort of in her late teens at this point. And, it has been confirmed by Naughty Dog that The Last of Us Part 2 is going to focus on Ellie's story. It is a continuation of The Last of Us, but it will focus on her story and sort of what she's gone through and where she's come. We start off in this kind of like a church, which is where the setting for the conference was. So obviously people are like, oh my God, this kind of nice little touch there. They showed a little section of like what kind of like a happy kind of section for her where she was sort of like at this kind of dance, and it was, you know, everything was very cheerful. There was kind of like love, sort of like teenage love kind of thing, and it was really hopeful and everything. But you could tell, even looking at Ellie, that she was a little unsure and a little uncertain, obviously, on who she can trust, and she's a little bit reticent about kind of giving her heart away and sort of being vulnerable again. So I think, you know, it's going to be interesting, because obviously it's going to continue on from Left Behind, which was the DLC to The Last of Us, which was incredible. And obviously she, you know, sort of fell in love and sort of gave herself over to that, and then ended up having her heart absolutely just broken and sort of torn apart. So it's kind of interesting to see all the little nuances in the face and the facial animations, and you could just see that she didn't feel completely comfortable there, and obviously everything that she's gone through and everything that she's seen has obviously had an impact on her you know, her outlook and her emotions and mental well-being. So I thought that was really cool. It then went from this really, like, you know, warm, like sort of loving, kind of lovely moment to just death and violence and hatred of her, like, you know, obviously kissing this other character, and then suddenly she's shivving someone in the neck. I found that disparity just so Naughty Dog, and it just shows exactly what The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be, which is complete contradiction of, you know, love and hate, and how they're sort of two sides of the same coin, and, you know, very close line between them. So I thought that was, you know, really great and jarring, and was brilliantly sort of showcase. Then we went into a full-on gameplay section, and I'm telling you guys, this game looks just freaking amazing. It looks like, you know, The Last of Us, but it's just so tweaked and so polished to perfection. And that's what I will say about a lot of these games that Sony showed. They all look incredibly polished, you know, and that's the Sony quality there. That they put a lot of time, they put a lot of quality into their games, and they don't rush them out, you know, in a kind of a buggy sort of situation. And I have to say that The Last of Us Part 2, the gameplay looked great. Her movement was brilliant. We got to see some stealth elements. We got to see some melee combat. Ellie obviously is not as physically strong as Joel, so she's got a lot of kind of dodges and ducks, and a lot of it is her trying to get out of these situations and running and trying to get away from it. She has a bow and arrow in a very sort of Tomb Raider, Lara Croft kind of way. Her movement was great. I loved her interaction with the environment. So using the grass for sort of foliage for cover and for stealth, the parkour sort of climbing up. And then they showed one bit where they were in like a shop where she was like running in between shelves and things and interacting with, you know, bodies that were on the ground, like actually taking an arrow out of one of them and using them for resources. And it just showed that the level of quality and polish in this game, and just how immersive and cinematic it's going to be, but you're in full control of it, which is kind of incredible. So The Last of Us Part 2 for me, guys, was one of the highlights of E3 this year. It's one of the best game demos I've seen this year, and I was blown away by it, and I just can't wait to play it.
See, I told you. He should be terrified.
It just looks absolutely incredible. We then got to see another game, Ghosts of Tsushima. which again is another huge one on my radar now. Now, it wasn't before today. I was a little bit interested in it. Absolutely, I was, because I love that time period. I love the setting of feudal Japan. But having seen the gameplay demo that they showed at Sony's conference, I am so hyped for this game, guys. This is the Tenchu game that I have been waiting for a very long time. It is beautiful. The music was great. The cinematography, it was gorgeous in terms of the way it's animated. It was, the screen, there was no HUD. It was totally immersive. I don't know whether the game's going to look this way in its final stage. Obviously, we'll have to wait to see. I don't know whether we're not going to have a HUD. I hope we don't, because I kind of prefer not to have one. That's one of the things I really liked in Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, is that we didn't have a HUD, and that really helped to immerse you in that story, and we didn't need one. There was melee combat in that, but it was handled in such an intuitive way that you didn't need all these things popping up on screen distracting you. So I hope Ghost of Tsushima is going to be very similar to that way. We got to see some melee combat, some sword play. You don't really see how it works, but it looked really interesting. That one move where he sort of was like waiting in a stance and then sort of, drew his sword and killed that guy in like one move. And then just the sword play, it just looked very slow, but very precise. And, it would make sense that it does, because, samurai and sword play and kendo, it's supposed to be slow. It's supposed to be graceful, minimal movements to do maximum damage. That's the whole idea of it. So I love that authenticity there. We got to see some stealth as well, which made me really happy. Some parkour. We got to see like this really freaking cool, like kind of like a grapple kind of lasso type ability that looked awesome. I totally freaked out at that bit. And then we got to see some like really badass sort of executions from above, which just definitely gave me Batman vibes, where you could sort of execute one and then dash to multiple characters. And then of course we finished off with a sword fight. Which cinematically just looked incredible, between the leaves and the sunset and the setting, and the way the leaves like moved around you and interacted with their feet as they were moving, and then when the fire and the arrows were coming, oh god, this game, guys, just looks absolutely incredible. It blew my mind. So Ghost of Tsushima is absolutely a must buy for me. I'm definitely getting this game on day one. We then saw a gameplay trailer for Death Stranding. We did see a lot more of it. I'm still as confused as hell what this game is. And it's still just Kojima being Kojima, which is not giving away much of anything and keeping that element of mystery. It, at the start of it, it looked like a walking simulator. We got to see, our main character sort of walking and transporting what looked like corpses and deceased bodies, but it looked huge, and the vistas looked incredible. They looked like certain locations that we have in the UK, like Snowdon and the Yorkshire Moors and everything. They looked really, the atmosphere looked great, really dark, really damp. The rain, bleak world looked really interesting. So that was kind of interesting. We got to see 2 new characters played by 2 actresses. Leah Seydoux and also Lindsay Wagner are also confirmed in that too. And then we got to see some kind of stealth survival horror elements, those kind of like invisible monsters, like that leave those like inky handprints. We got to see the baby, and I actually think the baby is a form of energy for this like sensor that we have on our shoulder, and we use the sensor. We now know we use the sensor to sort of sense these invisible creatures, and we have to try to avoid them because obviously if they find us, they'll kill us. But they also control time, and So many things. But yeah, there were definitely some elements of that stealth survival horror. That bit where he was crouching and trying to move through the level and avoid them just gave me the feels of like Metal Gear Solid 5, when you had to do that and during that game. So yeah, it definitely feels like a Kojima game. But we still know very little about it. It's still got so many question marks on this game. At the moment, it's not something I'm interested in buying. I want to find out more about it. I'm interested because it's a Kojima title and it's his first title since Metal Gear Solid 5, but I need to see some actual concrete gameplay. I need to know a little bit more about the story to actually make up my mind on whether or not it's something I want to buy and invest my time into. Then the last game that we got to see was Marvel's Spider-Man. We saw a gameplay demo last year and we saw another one this year, which was set at night, and the gameplay demo just looked fantastic. It showed us more combat. The combat looks just super sweet. It looks very much like, they're borrowing heavily from like the Batman Arkham series, but adding in this flair of Spider-Man, this kind of like thinking on your feet and improvising and spontaneity of it, and swinging people up with your webbing and acrobatics sort of side of things. You can also use like environmental things to your benefit as well. And I think he like grabbed like something and swung it around and hit them. And there's gadgets that you can use in the middle of combat too, which is really cool. I thought you'd only be able to use the gadgets for stealth elements, but the fact that you can actually like use these in combat and that they've kind of sort of map them to like a quick, like maybe it's L1 and it brings up this wheel and then you can use it to select it quickly. Just looks fun. The combat looks really fluid, really fun, and fluidity is definitely what you would want as Spider-Man. We saw a lot more web swinging. We saw a lot more action and a chase scene where Spider-Man were chasing Electro. Looked incredible. But the main thing that was super really exciting for me to learn was that we're going to have lots of other villains in this game. And I'm a huge fan of Spider-Man, and I know that the main villain is Mr. Negative, but I'm a big fan of the villains in Spider-Man. And so I'm super happy to see that we're going to have, a lot of those different villains that we all know and love in this game as well. So confirmed was Scorpion, Vulture, Electro, and Rhino. So I'm really excited to see more of them in the game and obviously take them on. And we're probably going to have some pretty cool boss fights in this game as well, which will be really, really cool.
Remember, he said not to kill him.
Good idea. In fact, we don't have to do this at all if you don't want to.
So those were the big 4 games that they showcased, and they did have quite, nice chunky sections of gameplay and demos, which were really good, and they all look incredible. We then got a few reveals. So one game that looked interesting, which is called Control. It's by Remedy, which are the team that bought us like Quantum Break, and the main character seemed to have like telekinetic powers. It very much has a feel of Quantum Break in its look and its design. So, we didn't see much bar a little bit of a gameplay trailer, but it looks interesting. The Resident Evil 2 remake trailer looked cool too. I did not know what this was at the start at all. I had no idea. I thought you were this little creature that was scurrying away, but obviously then when we saw the zombie, and then when we obviously saw Leon turn up on screen and everything, it looks pretty cool. It looks really, really good, and it's coming out on January the 25th, which is not that far away. So if you're a fan of Resident Evil, definitely that'll be something that you'll be adding onto your calendar. We then saw another game called Trover Saves the Universe. This is by Justin Roiland. That's the guy obviously behind Rick and Morty, the TV series. Honestly speaking, I've not really got any interest in it. The main character just sounded like it was voice acted by the same guy that does Morty. Same kind of tones, same kind of humour. To be fair, it looked pretty mediocre for me, so I wasn't interested in it at all, really. And then obviously we got a trailer for Kingdom Hearts 3, which focused on the Pirates of the Caribbean. Super excited to hear that we're going to have Pirates of the Caribbean in Kingdom Hearts 3. I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and but it was weird. It was really weird to see like Captain Jack Sparrow stood next to Sora.
Jack, don't you give this creep the time of day.
Sora, stand down. It's the code. Mustn't strike a pirate aboard ship when said pirate offers to confabulate.
It was weird. It was very strange, but we got to see some like naval combat and some really cool gameplay and combat and melee action too, and it looks fun. And obviously, finally, let's not forget that they also announced Neo 2, which I'm not surprised at because the first Neo game was very good and did extremely well. So it's kind of cool to hear that they're going to do a second one, and obviously it'll be interesting to see where that's going to go. So Sony's conference this year was good. You know, I enjoyed it. I liked the fact that it focused more on gameplay. I liked seeing gameplay demos fully all the way through. I've never been a big fan of cinematic gameplay trailers because I always think they just pick the best bits. You know, they're like a movie trailer. So I really like the fact that we got to see full-on gameplay demos that really gave us a feel for how these games are going to play and the level of quality that we could expect in them as well. So I was super happy with Sony's conference. For me, this year at E3, I just don't think I think in a lot of conferences, there haven't been enough gameplay demos. You know, EA had the same problem. Ubisoft, Square Enix, they had the same problem. Microsoft had some gameplay demos, but they didn't really have any gameplay demos for all their kind of, you know, big exclusives. So, you know, for me, I think Sony was the best this year in terms of actually showing gameplay. But obviously that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What did you think of Sony's conference this year? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think of the new style and the new kind of vibe that they were going for? And what did you think of the gameplay that we saw? Which out of those 4 games are you very excited for and obviously potentially buying? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll be back again all week with more E3 videos, so please look forward to that. Anyway, take care guys and girls, and as always, happy gaming. Bye guys.
Oh, Ellie. I think they should be terrified of you.
You do not hesitate.